The concept of time on a train is a fluid thing. In the city, time is measured in deadlines, in the sharp ticking of a clock on an office wall, in the urgent bells of streetcars. But aboard the Silver Sleeper, time had begun to soften. It stretched and curved, measured only by the rhythmic passing of telegraph poles and the steady consumption of coal in the engine far ahead. Elias Thorne dozed in the velvet corner of his compartment. It was not a deep sleep, but the pleasant, shallow drift of a mind finally allowed to unspool. He was roused not by noise, but by a shift in the train's internal atmosphere, a subtle signal felt in the bones that indicated the evening had progressed. He opened his eyes. The golden light from the wall lamp seemed warmer now, the shadows in the corners of the mahogany paneling deeper. He checked his pocket watch. 8 o'clock, the civilized hour for the evening meal. Elias rose slowly. His body felt heavy, but it was a pleasant heaviness, the weight of relaxation rather than fatigue. He washed his hands in the small fold-down basin, the water cool and refreshing against his skin. He adjusted his tie in the small mirror, smoothing the lapels of his dinner jacket. The man staring back at him already looked different than the one who had boarded in Chicago. The lines around his eyes seemed less defined, his shoulders less braced against the world. He slid open the door of his compartment. The corridor of the Starlight car was empty, a long, hushed tunnel of polished wood and patterned carpet. The air here was cooler than in his cabin, carrying a faint draft that smelled of the open night. To reach the dining car, he had to pass through 2 sleeping cars. The walk was a study in motion. He placed a hand on the wall to steady himself against the gentle swaying of the train. Under his feet, through the thick layers of wool carpet and padding, he could feel the tireless work of the bogies, the steel wheels tracing the iron path westward. He passed closed doors behind which other lives were settled for the evening. He heard the muffled sound of a page turning in a book, a soft cough, the low murmur of a private conversation. These were fleeting connections, tiny sonic glimpses into the private worlds of strangers, all bound together by the same forward momentum. Between the carriages, in the vestibules, the sensory experience intensified. The noise of the wheels was louder here, a metallic churning just beneath the floor plates. The air smelled sharply of coal smoke and ozone, a cold blast that invigorated the lungs before he pushed through the heavy door into the next car. Finally, ahead of him, he saw the etched glass door of the dining car, the words Ambrosia, Dining Salon frosted onto the pane. Even before he opened it, a warm, savory aroma drifted through the cracks, the scent of roasting meat, rich stocks, and brewing coffee, a comforting perfume that promised sustenance and warmth. He pushed the door open. If his sleeping compartment was a cozy cocoon, the dining car was a jewel box opened from the inside. It was a breathtaking display of Gilded Age opulence designed to make one forget they were hurtling through a dark wilderness at 40 miles an hour. The entire car glowed. Overhead, ornate brass chandeliers held electric bulbs, a modern marvel that cast a brilliant, clean light. Yet on every table there were also wax candles in silver holders, their flames dancing sympathetically with the vibration of the train, adding a soft, flattering flicker to the electric brilliance. The walls here were not just paneled, they were sculpted from deep reddish-brown mahogany, polished to such a high gloss that they reflected the room like dark mirrors. The wood seemed to hold an inner heat, radiating a sense of solidity and permanence. But it was the light that captured the eye. The light caught the crystal, hundreds of pieces of it. There were cut crystal water glasses on the tables, crystal decanters on the sideboard holding amber liquids, and crystal prisms hanging from the chandeliers that took the white light and shattered it into tiny rainbows that danced across the white linen tablecloths. The soundscape was a symphony of polite dining. It was a layer of hushed conversations, a low hum of contented humanity, punctuated by the delicate, musical sounds of the table, the tink of a silver fork against fine china, the resonant clink of a crystal toast, the soft foomp of a heavy linen napkin being unfolded. A maitre d', dressed in impeccable penguin black and white, materialized at Elias's side. He moved with a fluid grace that compensated perfectly for the train's motion. "Good evening, sir. A table for one?" His voice was low, professional, welcoming. "Yes, thank you," Elias replied. He was led to a small table by a window on the left side of the train. The chair was heavy, upholstered in a tapestry fabric of deep greens and golds. The maitre d' held it for him, and Elias sank into it. It was comfortable, supportive, and positioned perfectly so he could see both the length of the dining car and the darkness outside. The table setting was an exercise in precision. The white linen tablecloth was starched to crisp perfection, cool and smooth beneath his hands. The silverware was heavy sterling, cool to the touch, polished until it gleamed with a white fire. The centerpiece was a small silver vase holding 3 fresh, hothouse carnations, a splash of impossible red against the white linen. A waiter arrived instantly, pouring water from a sweating silver pitcher into Elias's cut crystal goblet. The ice cubes chimed against the glass, a sound as clear as a bell. Elias took a sip. The water was aggressively cold, shocking his throat in a pleasant way, washing away the last of the city dust. He ordered a simple meal, a potage of winter vegetables, followed by the prime rib of beef. He declined wine, ordering instead a pot of black tea to be served with the meal. The waiter nodded and vanished silently. Waiting for his meal, Elias indulged in the quiet pleasure of observation. The dining car was about half full. These were his fellow travelers, companions on this steel island. 2 tables away, an elderly couple ate in comfortable silence. They did not need to speak. The gentleman, with an impressive snowy white mustache, carefully sliced his duck. The lady, wearing intricate lace at her throat, watched the landscape slide by, a gentle, reminiscing smile on her face. They had shared thousands of meals, Elias imagined, and this was just one more in a long shared history. Their presence was calming, a testament to endurance. Across the aisle, a younger man in a sharply tailored tweed suit was reading a newspaper. Every now and then he would lower the paper and stare into the middle distance, his eyes unfocused. He was likely a businessman, Elias thought, perhaps heading to Denver or San Francisco to secure a contract. Yet even he seemed to be succumbing to the train's spell, the tension of commerce slowly bleeding out of him with every mile. Elias turned his attention to the window. It was a black mirror now. He could see the reflection of the dining car, the mahogany, the crystal, his own face superimposed over the rushing darkness outside. Occasionally, the darkness would break. They passed a lonely farmhouse, its single lit window a tiny yellow square of warmth in the immense void of the prairie. Who lived there? What were they doing at this moment? Watching the great train thunder past, perhaps, dreaming of where it was going? They rushed past a small town, a blur of gas lamps and storefronts that existed for only 10 seconds before being swallowed up by the night again. The train whistle blew, long, low, mournful, announcing their passage to the empty fields.
The soup arrived. It was a thick, velvety potage, the color of autumn leaves, smelling earthy and rich. It was hot, steaming gently. Elias lifted the heavy silver spoon. The soup was deeply comforting, tastes of roasted root vegetables and cream warming him from the inside out. He ate slowly. There was no rush. The train was doing the work. He only had to exist. The main course was a marvel of logistical culinary art. The slice of prime rib was thick and tender, served with roasted potatoes that were crisp on the outside and fluffy as clouds within. The juice was dark and glossy. Eating on the train was a unique sensory experience. The subtle vibration of the car traveled up through the table, through the plate, and into the silverware. He could feel the engine's power in his fork. The flavor seemed intensified by the setting. Surrounded by mahogany and crystal, moving through the night, simple roast beef felt like a feast for a king. He watched the dance of the waiters. They were masters of balance. They carried large silver trays loaded with covered dishes down the narrow aisle, anticipating every lurch and sway of the train, their bodies fluid, their hands steady. They spoke in hushed tones, moving like well-dressed ghosts, ensuring that glasses were never empty and crumbs never lingered. The candelabra on his table had 3 candles. Elias watched the flames. They were mesmerizing. They dipped and flared slightly with the train's movements, casting soft, mobile shadows on the linen. The wax slowly melted, dripping in slow-motion tears down the side of the candles, solidifying into smooth satin ribbons. He poured a cup of tea from the silver pot. It was strong and hot. He added a splash of milk and watched it swirl into cloudy patterns before disappearing into the dark liquid. He added a single cube of sugar, dropping it in with a tiny splash, listening to the faint fizz as it dissolved. He sat back, holding the warm porcelain cup in both hands, letting the heat seep into his palms. He felt profoundly content. The worries that had dogged him in Chicago felt very far away now, miles to the east, receding further with every revolution of the wheels. Here, in this glowing tube of light and warmth, the world was simplified. There were no major decisions to be made. The hierarchy of needs was easily met: warmth, food, safety, movement.
The dining car began to empty slowly. The elderly couple rose, the gentleman offering his arm to his wife with practiced courtesy. They nodded politely to Elias as they passed, a silent acknowledgement of shared space. The waiters began to reset the tables for breakfast, their movements quiet and efficient. They stripped the linen, revealing the dark wood beneath for just a moment before shaking out a fresh white cloth that settled over the table like a gentle snowfall. Elias finished his tea. The dregs in the bottom of the cup were cool. He felt a pleasant drowsiness settling over him, heavier than before. It was a sleepiness born not of exhaustion, but of peace. He signaled the waiter and signed the bill with the small gold pencil provided. He left a generous tip, grateful for the quiet, impeccable service. "Did you enjoy your meal, sir?" the maitre d' asked as Elias stood to leave. "It was perfect," Elias said softly. "Exactly what I needed." "I am glad to hear it. Sleep well, Mr. Thorne." Leaving the brightness of the dining car felt like stepping from a stage into the wings of a theater. The corridors felt dimmer now, quieter. The train seemed to have settled into a deeper groove for the night journey. The rhythm of the wheels felt steadier, a constant rolling bass note that underpinned the silence. He walked back through the sleeping cars. Most of the doors were closed now. He heard the deep, rhythmic breathing of someone already asleep. He felt a kinship with these unseen sleepers. They were all trusting the train, trusting the engineer at the helm, trusting the steel rails to carry them safely through the dark. When he reached his own car, the Starlight, the attendant was sitting on a small stool at the end of the hall, polishing a pair of boots. He stood as Elias approached. "Everything satisfactory, sir?" "Yes, thank you. Good night." "Good night, sir." Elias re-entered his compartment. It welcomed him back. The air was still warm, smelling faintly of the lavender sachet his sister had packed in his valise. The lamp was still burning low. The attendant had been in during his dinner. The bed was now turned down. The heavy velvet coverlet was folded neatly at the foot of the berth. The crisp white sheets were turned back in an inviting triangle, revealing plump pillows waiting to cradle his head. A small carafe of fresh water and a clean glass sat on the nightstand. Elias undressed slowly, hanging his dinner jacket in the small wardrobe. He put on his pajamas, the flannel soft against his skin. He went to the window one last time before bed. He turned out the lamp, plunging the room into total darkness so he could see out. The landscape had changed. The flat prairie was beginning to wrinkle. Low, rolling hills were silhouetted against the star-strewn sky. The moon was higher now, smaller and brighter,
casting a cool silver sheen over the frosted grass of the autumn fields. The train was a ribbon of light cutting through the immense darkness of the American continent. He pressed his forehead against the cool glass. He felt small, but not insignificant. He was a traveler, a witness to the vastness of the night. He crawled into the berth. The mattress was thick and firm, the sheets cool and smooth. He pulled the heavy wool blankets up to his chin. The weight was comforting, pressing him down into the mattress, grounding him even as he moved. He lay on his back, listening. The sounds of the dining car, the crystal, the silver were gone. Now there was only the train itself, the creak of wood, the groan of metal, the shush-shush of steam, and above it all, the endless, hypnotic rhythm of the wheels on the track. Click, clack, click, clack. It was a mantra. It was a heartbeat. Elias closed his eyes. The afterimages of the crystal chandeliers danced behind his eyelids for a moment, then faded. The warmth of the mahogany room lingered in his mind. He felt safe. He felt warm. He was moving towards something new, leaving the old behind. The rhythm lulled him. His breathing slowed, matching the cadence of the rails. The boundary between awake and asleep blurred, softened, and finally dissolved completely into the velvet dark.